Jack, what was the moment or reason you decided to go back on diet?
That's a really good question. I suppose the response to that is there was no one single moment that led me back to my diet. It was a decision that took actually several years. I had noticed a decline in my kind of mental faculties over the course of like my early 20s, as I mentioned in the film. And it got to the point where it was really kind of hindering my social activities, my work activities, and indeed my relationships as well with people, both romantic and platonic. And it gets to a point when you realize that you're kind of sentencing yourself to something which is completely unnecessary. And while I knew it would be a challenge to go back on diet, I was delighted to learn that when I did decide to return to diet, there were so many options available to me, which was a massive surprise, I should point out as well. Having been off since a child back in the 90s, it was amazing to see how much the kind of industry had shifted. So it wasn't one single moment, but it was kind of paying attention to social media, paying attention to kind of the spirit of PKU resonating through everyone in the community, and kind of just being encouraged by those around me and my own thoughts internally.
How do you keep yourself from cheating, or did you during your month on this diet? And what advice can you give us to encourage more positivity?
I thought about this
Yeah.
while looking through the footage from you, Lillian, and that particular line about your visceral need for meat. And I thought about it a lot. And something I think that's really, really important to point out to anyone who's kind of here today, who's never kind of crossed that line like I have and kind of ventured into that world, is it was incredibly disappointing. And I think it's really crucial to point out that, the way you smell and you perceive the world through smell, and the cultural kind of tendencies around in food is not what you find when you have meat for the first time. I had meat for the first time when I was 14 years old, and I was incredibly disappointed because my expectations were so high. Um, the texture is something you can't prepare yourself for. The flavor is very underwhelming. So do be aware that you do build it up in your mind based on your expectations because everyone in the world is so obsessed with it. But it's that visceral need, I think, would be thoroughly let down if you ever did cross that bridge. So it's just completely not worth it.
So I think that so my soul does not crave meat. I just want to be very clear that my soul is repelled by the idea of eating an animal. But it's like almost as if my muscles or something in my body, like my physical body, when I smell the meat, I get hungry. And I think that's what I was describing is like there's a visceral hunger that happens, but it's not connected to desire.
8-year-old heard that you came off diet for 10 years. She was curious if you experienced any lasting effects of being off diet for those 10 years, Jack.
That's a good question.
That's a very good question. There were certainly effects that felt long lasting for a long period throughout my 20s. Um, I do think primarily it's the day-to-day level management that affects me, but I do often reflect, and as I point out in the film, my memory is really shockingly bad for my early 20s, like worryingly so, which I do personally attribute to my being off diet for so long. And I'm very regretful that there's so many chunks of my life that are very kind of patchy for me, and that is a very depressing thing to kind of live with when you really want to try and attribute memories to something. So yeah, I don't recommend it.